name is Gwynn Witherow and I am an area manager with MindWise. I have responsibilities within the Belfast Trust area, which would take me from Fort William on the outskirts of the city to this service that we're in at the moment. And I also have a responsibility for some services in the Southeastern Trust area, which is primarily through Downpatrick, Ards and Lisburn. Actually, I suppose the crux of the matter is MindWise were actually paid to take me, which is quite an unusual situation. I'd had a fairly serious injury with my back and had found myself unable to work, and I'd actually been out of work at some level for about 3 years. And as part of a government scheme to help ease people like myself back into work, they were actually paying employers to take us on. So the government actually paid for me for 6 weeks, bought me a nice new chair and sort of supported the organisation to support me to come back into full-time work. And when I came into it at first, I sort of thought, well, we'll give this a go physically, see how I can cope with it, but it was a completely new arena for me, so I also had to open my mind a wee bit more and actually learn to cope with the different environment that I was in. I really didn't have any understanding of it. I knew a little bit about learning disability and I knew about physical disability, but I had no real concept of mental illness as such. I'd heard this sort of 1 in 4 statistic that people would use for publicity purposes, but hadn't really figured out what that meant in real terms. And because the first service that I went into was a service for people with severe mental illness, to be honest, the first couple of weeks took a lot of adjustment on my part. I suppose then it was very well intentioned, but an awful lot more was done for the service user or for the tenant, and the difference being now that that service user, that tenant, is very much more involved in the decision-making processes, and that's absolutely right. It's the way that it should be. So they will have a lot more say now in the day-to-day running of the service that they're engaged with. They'll have more say about the type of support they get, when they get it, what they do with that. They'll have more support or more say into how they manage their appointments with their psychiatrist, for example, and the interaction with the staff in the services that they attend. They have a lot more say about that as well. There are more forums set up to give them formal opportunities to have their voice heard, and within the organisation that takes them right through to the Board of Trustees, for example. But also on the day-to-day more informal conversations that they have with staff, it's much more of a partnership approach, and it's much more where the staff are there now to support the person to make the best for themselves of the support that they're getting. I think service delivery now, it's really changed quite a lot. For a start, there's a lot more younger people that are actually wanting to work in the sector, and they're coming in with qualifications behind them. Now, at our ground level face-to-face, we don't insist that anybody has a qualification, because there are people out there with a range of experiences that will naturally make them good at this job without a piece of paper to say that they are. But the benefit of some of the younger ones coming in with the education, the training and learning behind them means that they come in with a wider knowledge framework to start with, a bigger range of skills, and also because they're a wee bit younger, sometimes they come with fewer preconceived ideas, and they also bring an energy with them that maybe some of us older ones don't possess anymore. Well, I think we are a lot more person-orientated, person-centred. That would be one of the approaches that we would take. So really now it's the service user that's at the middle. Everything starts with them and radiates out. Whereas previously it would have been more that the service would have laid things on for, and that person had to fit in. And it's much different now. It starts with them, and the support that we offer radiates out from what it is they need. So the needs are agreed, and the service user is pivotal to that. They identify what their needs are, and then the service tries to support that, rather than trying to fit the person into a box that they maybe don't necessarily belong in. And I think for the service user, that experience means they feel so much more in control. They actually feel it, I think now they feel that it's what's best for them, and that they've had a really pivotal role in making those decisions. And that's much more, and not a word that everybody likes, but empowering for them, and that they have a sense of being able to direct what it is they need and what they get. Well, certainly a few years back, our service users or tenants would have simply gone along with what the psychiatrist said. So if the doctor said you will take so many tablets at particular times, that was done without question. Our service users now are a lot more informed about the medication that they take, so they're not afraid now to go back and question, or to ask, am I on the right thing, or to point out that I've been on this for this length of time and I'm not seeing any benefit, can we look at a change? So they are much stronger in themselves in asking for example, medication reviews. But I think as well as that, there's a recognition that medication still has a big part to play, but it's only a part of a much more holistic view. And the talking therapies, for example, are being seen now as being much more beneficial than what they would have been even 5 or 10 years ago. Unfortunately, the funding to provide what everybody would need in that respect simply isn't there within the country at the moment. Well, I think they have changed. People quite often liken it to the changes that have been made in discussing, for example, cancer, where 20 or 30 years ago you didn't say the word, then it was referred to as the C word, and then it was referred to openly as cancer, and then we had the publicity and the reduction in stigma. And I think with mental ill health, that process has started as well. 10 or 15 years ago, it was certainly something that you didn't want to talk about. You wouldn't have gone disclosing it to people that you didn't know particularly well. And you certainly wouldn't maybe have told an employer, for example. I think that's changing now, and that people are prepared to be much more open about it, and others are prepared to be more accepting of it, and to see that preconceived ideas have been challenged, that people with mental ill health have proven their worth in society. And I think a really good example of it is recently, where there was some controversy over, for example, Tesco Asda's Halloween outfits. And there was an absolutely brilliant campaign then through Twitter, where young people in particular were able to send messages right across the world going, well, I've got mental health issues or difficulties, and I'm proud of who I am, and I'm going to make a statement about it. And that would never have happened either without the technology, but also without that shift in attitudes. I suppose one of the best examples I can give of something that I'm really, really proud of being involved in. We had a young girl that was within one of our services. She was particularly unwell for a long time, and she would have self-harmed to particularly high and occasionally dangerous levels. But we worked with her over the period of about 18-20 months, and gradually she moved from intensive support, which is essentially 24 hours a day, through to a reduced level of support, and from that she moved on out into the community. Now, her mental health diagnosis was around a personality disorder, and I had the pleasure of sitting in at a training session where she was one of my trainers. And it was a great feeling to sit there and know that the support that my service had given her had got her to this stage in her life where she was able to stand up in front of a room full of professional people, and she was the one delivering the training. She was being regarded as the expert, and she stood there and did that with great confidence. And it made me smile on the inside as well as the out that she could. Not just that I think that the changes that are happening now are really positive. I think it's the start of a process that we're going through, that we shouldn't think that now that we've got the person-centred approach, now that we've got the recovery approach being talked about and being acted out on, that we stop here. I think we've always got to keep moving forwards, and I would expect that within MindWise that that's something that we'll do, is that we'll not stand still, that we'll keep moving forward.